the darkness.
The Tale of the Undertaker. Bernard Sloane had the perfect family. They were always there, waiting for him when he finished his work. Every evening at 7 o'clock, he put out the lights, locked the front door, and went downstairs to the basement to spend the evening with his family. His wife Jenny would be sitting on the couch, knitting a sweater for him. His mother was always dozing in her easy chair. His son Ben and his daughter Emma were usually sitting at the table, playing a board game. Little Luke would lay on the floor, playing with his toys while little Martha, the youngest, sat at the piano. Bernard would sit down in his big comfortable chair and chat with them until bedtime. He told them all about his day and who had died recently in town. He would repeat funny stories and jokes he heard and tell them his views and opinions on any subject that came to mind. They always listened patiently and never argued or contradicted him. When it was time to go to bed, Bernard would yawn and stretch his arms. He would go around giving them all a kiss on the cheek and saying, "Well, good night, everyone. Pleasant dreams." Then he would turn out the lights, climb the stairs, and lock the door behind him when he went to bed. Middleton was a small town, and Bernard was the only undertaker in the area. His funeral parlor was also his home, and he got all the business there was. Although he didn't have many close friends, he was well known, respected, and above suspicion. Everything went like clockwork. People would bring their dead loved ones to him, and Bernard would embalm their bodies and prepare them for burial. The funeral was usually held in the local church, and the dead were buried in the local graveyard. One day, as Bernard was cleaning up the funeral parlor, a policeman came to the front door.
"Yes, officer, can I help you?"
Bernard asked.
"I'm here about the Periwinkle child."
The policeman said. Bernard had a puzzled frown on his face.
"The Periwinkle child? Martha Periwinkle,"
said the policeman.
"the little girl who drowned just 5 months ago?" "Oh, yes, of course,"
said Bernard.
I remember now. Well, I'll level with you, Mr. Sloane. The family had her body exhumed. When they opened the coffin, they got quite the shock. There was nothing but stacks of old newspapers inside. "By golly,"
said Bernard.
"Well, that's just terrible. Now look, Mr. Sloane, theft of a dead body is a criminal offense. If you cooperate, we'll go easy on you. The family just wants their daughter's remains so they can give her a proper burial."
Bernard was highly offended.
"Now I say, I've been in business in Middleton for 20 plus years. Everybody knows me. How could you think I would do such a thing? Then you won't mind if I search your house."
Bernard's face suddenly turned pale.
Well, I certainly do mind. This is my home as well as my place of business. I know my rights as a citizen. I'm not going to have anybody snooping through my private property without a search warrant. Well, if that's the way you want to do it, that's fine by me. I'll be back in an hour with a search warrant. In the meantime, I'll leave an officer outside to make sure you don't try to get rid of any evidence.
Bernard watched as the policeman turned and left. He shut the front door and stood there thinking for a few minutes. Then, he went downstairs to the basement to see his family. He opened the curtains and let some light into the room for the first time. His wife was still knitting. His mother was still dozing off on the couch. Ben and Emma were still playing their board game. Luke was still playing with his toys, and little Martha was still at the piano. Somehow, they all seemed a little withered, less like living people than like mummies. Only Martha, the new girl, looked as fresh as she had been on the day she drowned. Bernard let out a deep sigh. He picked up a container of gasoline and began splashing it around the basement room. He splashed it all over his wife, his mother, and each one of their children. Then, he kissed them all on the forehead and sat down in his chair. He loved them all so much, and he just couldn't bear to see his family torn apart. He reached into his pocket and took out a box of matches. He selected one match, struck it, and the entire room burst into flames. He then screamed as the fire engulfed them.
Pleasant dreams, everybody. Pleasant dreams.